YouTube Founded Community, David Beard, ESQ fans, random people on the internet. My name is Giggens. We're here today with David Beard of Endless Summer Quarterly, the official word on the Beach Boys here, sporting some ESQ, not merchandise, just an exclusive shirt there. How's it going, man?
Good, good. It's good to see you, and congratulations on your engagement.
Thank you so much.
Have
Thank you,
to
thank you,
have to
thank
get
you.
that in there. That's exciting. Like I said, exciting stuff. And I hope myself and all of your viewers are going to be invited to the wedding.
It's gonna be a huge wedding. I mean, we're planning on asking the Beach Boys themselves to reunite for us specifically.
Oh,
I
wow!
want I want Blondie and Ricky up there. I want David. I want the whole nine yards up there. I want
Oh,
everybody to show up. Just
to perform the Summer in Paradise album.
the whole thing, start to finish. I mean, I think if I asked nicely enough, I think they'd be all right with it. I have nothing to give them except
Man,
for love.
hey, you got all my encouragement. That'd be something to see.
I mean, it's gonna be yeah. I mean, Jenny and I are two humongous Beach Boys nerds, so it'll be the Beach Boys wedding of the century. But yes, thank you so much. Extremely excited for that. You got a new issue of ESQ out, and as you mentioned in the issue itself, it is a bit of a stopgap from what you've been doing the last couple issues, focusing primarily on Brian outside of the boys.
Mhm.
And I've been loving how these covers have looked. They've looked so cool the last couple of issues with the records behind and the one shot in the middle. So I figured we can kind of piggyback a little bit off and talk a little bit about some of the Brian stuff, some of the Gary Usher stuff in this new one,
Mhm.
and we could wrap up with how the issue starts at the end of
Okay.
the video.
Yeah.
But yeah. So to catch everybody up, if you haven't watched the other episodes yet, the last couple of issues of ESQ have been about Brian and working outside of the Beach Boys, the stuff he did for Sharon Marie, and you name it. It goes down the rabbit hole deep, and David has found some incredible stuff. Some of the pictures he's seen has been put in the magazine has been just mind-blowing. Information we never knew about anything with Mike being a manager. Like, it's been really cool. So let's talk about some of the stuff that's in this new issue that kind of doesn't wrap up, but kind of like leaves you wanting more for what's going to come next.
Sure. Well, I
So let's
had,
talk about that.
yeah. So I had I teased it in the spring issue. I know, and I think over the both the winter 2024 and the spring 2025, I had created ads for Stephen McParlin. Uh, and he last fall, Stephen had published, e-published, not physical book, but e-published a book about Bruce Johnston, which we reviewed on the ESQ website. Lane Lannon reviewed that, and that's kind of where Stephen kind of came in my orbit. I already had Stephen's books and I had them out while doing the research for these two issues because Gary Usher was a pivotal figure, integral figure in Brian's early development as a songwriter and producer and arranger,
Absolutely.
as much as anybody was in the Beach Boys story.
Yeah.
And and in fact, in this winter 2024 edition, I even did a sidebar for the Rachel and the Revolvers single, which happened in I think October of '62, and it was the first outside production that Brian did that I'm aware of.
So early.
And he did it with Gary, and it's interesting because it was kind of a foundational thing in that it was very clear to me that Brian was heavily influenced, or I don't know if influenced is the right word. He was a big fan of rhythm and blues. I think just as much as Carl was, and that's I think us as a general fandom, or anybody who likes the Beach Boys, we think of them as certain different types of groups based on the different albums they did through their career. But so everybody thinks Al Jardine, oh, he's the folky. Carl, oh, he loved R&B, and Mike, doo-wop and R&B. And with Brian, you think, okay, well, we know he must have liked jazz. I don't know if he liked jazz per se. He loved R&B. He liked Mike. There's famous. Mike's told the story many times. Where it's Mike, his sister Maureen, and Brian. They went to a Methodist church as kids, and on their way home to Mount Vernon and Fairway, the three of them would sing Everly Brothers songs, but three-part harmony instead of two.
Right.
And so the doo-wop, the love for doo-wop, the love for rhythm and blues was really always there. And it just doesn't get, the focus of that, of being a part of Brian's love of music, doesn't usually kind of come to the front of any discussion. And it's probably because Brian was so great at crafting all the stuff he did with the Beach Boys through the
Right.
years that we don't really talk about the love of the rhythm and blues part of Brian's career. Or when we think of Wild Honey, we know that that was primarily a Brian and Mike record in terms of who wrote the songs.
Yeah, right.
Carl gets featured so much as a vocalist. Again, I think the common thread there is the fans just don't think about that. They think about Wild Honey. Oh, that's because Carl loved R&B more than they think about it as Mike and Brian and their love of R&B.
Right. Exactly.
So Brian really loves to this day R&B
Yeah.
and rhythm and blues. So I just love that part of my discovery and putting this stuff together. And Gary Usher's got a fascinating story. So what I had planned to do all along for this summer edition was initially I was going to do a full stopgap issue of just Gary Usher content.
Yeah, that's right. We
Just
were
just
talking
to
about that.
kind of just to kind of show people what was going on. If you have these other two editions, then what was going on with Gary and Brian during that same period so that they could kind of put all the pieces together before we got a little bit later into the 60s where Brian returned to outside production.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason Brian stopped outside production is because the Beach Boys became so successful and he started putting so much time into the machine that became the Beach Boys.
Main
And
job.
yeah, and he the requirement was he had to provide for them, and I think when you look at what he did from '64 through Good Vibrations, it's very clear whether it was for the Beach Boys or anybody. Thank goodness it was for the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
It just makes me think. I think I'm saying this. I think I'm quoting him correctly. Bruce Johnston in the Disney Plus documentary said something to the effect of, Brian was lucky to have us sing his dreams. It's something to that effect.
It sounds familiar.
And I agree. That I think that's a fair thing to say.
Yeah.
Brian could, and from a lot of Pet Sounds, he did do his own thing. But the fact that he had those five voices, or four, Dennis on occasion, to kind of say, come in here, do this, and they could do it.
Yeah.
I think just helped him realize more than what he would have just on his own. The same way that he did with the Wrecking Crew, Brian could have played the instruments, but by having the Wrecking Crew in a room, you know, LA's finest musicians, he was able to have an idea. Here's something that they would play and then implement it the same way that the Beach Boys would vocally implement.
Right.
So that's what I think. And so Gary Usher's story is fascinating. He was kind of the Bob Gaudio of the situation, if you will, because Bob Gaudio came into the Four Seasons and kind of knew by that point how to handle licensing and publishing.
Yeah, he was a huge factor for the success of that group.
Oh my gosh, yes, they would
Yes.
have gotten ripped off like everybody else had he not known
Completely.
what he was doing.
Unreal.
And Murray Wilson did not know what he was doing from the standpoint of managing a group, and it's kind of and it's told in the Gary Usher book. Now, I use just an excerpt, and I just felt like this. It's the most fascinating read in the world, and you got to go to Stephen McParland's website. And if you get the new edition, it's really easy to go to because there's a QR code. You just use your phone and you're there.
Yeah.
And they're all ebooks, and you can. It's just so much reading, so much research. Uh, he started back a long time. I think late '70s researching this stuff when Gary was still here, interviewing the subjects.
Wow.
So important. So invaluable stuff. Now the thing I ran into, I was going to do the whole issue with Gary, and then the news broke that Mike was getting inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Now he'd been inducted twice or nominated twice already in the last several years, so I didn't know if it was going to happen. So I was still had the Gary Usher plan. So when the news broke that Mike was in fact going to get in, then I thought, okay, this is an easy enough shift. I'll just make not as much content, but I'll still find a good chapter of Stephen's book to put in the back to kind of give people a sense of the time and hopefully inspire them to go and get the full book, which is the
Right.
whole goal.
Right.
And not just
Exactly.
that book, but there's so many. There's a book on Kim Fowley. There's books on Jan and Dean. There's so much great stuff by Stephen McFarland. So that plugs over. But but the thing I ran into in doing the Gary Usher content was, and this speaks to my feature stories about Mike. There's some stuff in there that I just was taken aback by. Just out of the way, kind of contentiousness statements against Mike that just were unnecessary.
Hmm.
It's you can say you don't think somebody's a good sax player by just saying, Mike was not a very competent sax player. He managed. However you can say it, you can use he's not a very competent man, sax player, But I don't remember wherever Mike was touting himself around in any of the past interviews during that period saying, you should check me out on sax.
He
There was
never
never
done
any of
that.
that. So I don't know, and I had to clean it up a little. So that's another reason for people to go out and get the actual thing because I just felt it was a little over the top and it attempts of degrading Mike's role in the group's history. It just seemed really unnecessary to me. And I okayed it with Steven. I said, I'm going to edit this. I'm going to take this out. I don't think it's necessary. Um, so that leads me to the great news about Mike being inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame. And I mentioned Murray Wilson. And, you know, I'll first say, because it almost seems if you just talk about the bad part of Murray's behavior, that people think, well, he did good. Of course he did.
Right.
He's responsible for them getting a record contract.
Yeah.
He fought for his boys, um, but they pissed him off and they
Complete.
hurt his feelings. Well, Brian and Mike did. And so initially, I think it was in early '64. They kind of said, "Listen, you can go away."
Please stop bugging us.
But he kept showing up and kept showing up, and so it was during the all summer long recording sessions where Mike and Brian pulled him aside and said, "Listen, we're letting you go as our manager. We need you to hear that," because he kept showing up. I mean, there's the famous "Help Me Rhonda" session where he showed up, that many people have heard. But that's after this point.
Right. Right.
So, but you can hear in that session, you can hear uh, Murray is bitter. He
Completely.
may be drunk, but he's bitter. The whole way when he's leaving, the way he's talking to Brian and says, "You're going down. You're going to amount to." He's trying to tell. He's belittling his son, who's at the top of his game, and
Yeah.
he's telling him he's going nowhere. And he said, "I'll work with you on a fight from the heart. On a fight from the heart, or whatever it was." And Brian's like, "No, no, we don't want to do that." And,
Like,
and
won't do it again.
they were doing that. It's just that he wanted his dad out the door.
Right. Exactly.
I don't need you to do what I'm doing to be
Right.
successful. I've got this.
He knew. Yeah.
That crushed Murray. So he started to, one can only assume that's when the conspire, where he started to conspire on how to do something that would benefit him and get him back into the fold of the success.
Yeah.
So there's some things that don't make sense and they don't quite add up. But because as I wrote in editor's notes in the new issue, when people talk about Murray selling the Sea of Tunes catalog in late '69, he called Brian up on the phone and told him, "I know this for a fact because I interviewed Richard Dickey Mayer, who was there when it happened."
Yeah.
And Brian was crushed.
Yeah. Of
But
course.
whenever anybody tells that story, just as I just did, nobody's thinking about Mike.
No.
And they should, because Mike and Brian are the ones who pulled Murray aside. Even at that point in the spring of '64, Murray had already made it a point to not put Mike's name on the records.
Right. It was a
Fun,
Wilson.
fun, 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 fun came out. Mike's name wasn't on it.
It was a Wilson thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it was it. And there's another aspect of it here, and I don't know. I don't know that anybody knows. I don't know. Was Murray just putting Brian's name on it? Because if there's only one credit on the record, then there's more revenue, right?
Yeah, true.
If you're handling publishing for the artist, which he still was, even though he'd been let go as the manager,
Yeah,
that's more straight revenue.
yeah, right.
And he could manipulate and badger Brian to get his way, which I think, of course, historically we've seen enough things that there are enough indicators that that is what in fact happened.
Exactly.
Because again, my interview with Dickie Mayer, Arnie Gellers even told me that Murray was constantly calling Brian and badgering him, constantly,
So bad.
constantly. And so the weird thing is, this is jumping ahead. On the Friends album, they bring Murray in and Murray sings on a song.
I know.
And then right after that, Murray co-writes Breakaway with Brian, which is a
Yeah,
pretty good song.
yeah, right.
So what? Right after Breakaway, not long after that, Murray sells the catalog. And so I do know that Murray did not ask Brian permission. He called him and said, I sold it.
Yeah.
So he knows if he had sat down with Brian and said, what do you think?
Well, it would have been no.
Brian would have said, no, no, no,
Absolutely not.
you can't sell my songs.
Yeah.
So again, in that moment, if how, I guess Brian's reaction was, how could you sell my songs? They weren't just Brian's songs. They were Mike's songs too. And keep in mind now, from the point they let Murray go, and again, even before that, you have Fun, 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 then you have I Get Around, then you have California Girls.
Yeah.
I don't know why Mike didn't stop the presses and say, what's going on? Why we got to change this right now. That's another thing that doesn't make sense to me. If Mike was aware, he was keenly aware that his name wasn't on the credits, why he wouldn't have done something.
The
So
only
that's the weird. That's like a big question mark. And maybe he kept waiting for Brian to rectify it.
that's probably part
But
of it.
I don't know if that was fair to Brian because Mike understood the dynamic between Murray and Brian.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It
It
could
was
just because
probably
it was family.
yeah, that it was probably a combination of a lot of things. I mean, in those days they were constantly moving. They didn't have time to sit down and do nothing and think, oh, I wonder what that publishing deal. Oh, I gotta get to San Francisco. Oh, I gotta get to California.
But right, I
Radio,
got to get home.
TV.
I'll get home and I get to see my wife for all of a day or two, and then
Yeah, like, ooh, I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna get home. I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna go into the studio. I'm gonna
yeah.
record. Who knows how many songs, and we're gonna hit the road again. Yeah,
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 I'm gonna buy a new car. I need to buy a house. Like the
exactly.
last thing on their mind was, wonder how publishing works.
And then the record gets out, and he doesn't. You don't see the record until the record is made.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
you don't know. So I think it really stunned Mike that it kept happening even after Murray had been let go,
Yeah,
and then Good Vibrations it was correct. Um, so I don't know if something was where Mike said, "Well, by God, I'm going to make sure that my name's on here,"
yeah,
but so it seems by '66 he was present enough to make sure. But it doesn't so when Murray sells Sea of Tunes, there's so from the point where the first single that comes out, and it wasn't just singles, Mike wrote other songs on the records that he wasn't credited
oh
for.
yeah, for sure.
He's out performing the music. People are buying the music, and he's living with the knowledge. This is 63, 64, 65, when they're growing and their popularity is growing. He's on stage, and you got to think if I was that in those shoes, and every time I went off the stage, and I thought to myself, I'm not getting paid for this. I mean, I'm getting
Yeah,
paid for the performance, but I'm not getting my my son's not on the record. My name's not on the record, so I'm not getting paid for that song. And I
right.
just performed it,
Yeah,
and everybody loves it.
yep. It must have been mind blowing.
The resentment that must have built in that span of time to the point, that the resentment must have truly been built up. Thankfully he discovers TM. He would tell you that.
Yeah,
Uh, but then the Sea of Tunes sale just destroyed Brian and it destroyed Mike, and it fractured everything. It fractured Brian and Mike's relationship. It fractured Brian's relationship with the group. Because look at what 2020 was.
Yeah,
It
peace.
was all hands on deck. It
Yeah,
was so you know and there's the other thing is people, the phrasing I've always kind of heard most commonly when it comes to Brian, and because Brian is responsible for the great arrangements, the productions, the
yeah,
songwriting, the tracks. If not for Brian, and I think my way of looking at it is because of Brian, not if not for. I think and not if not for suggests that the others weren't capable,
completely. Right.
and I think because of suggests that Brian was such a creative machine and creative architect to that sound
Yeah,
that because of Brian, the others all were able to supplement, whether it be by vocals or by songwriting or whatever their contribution may be.
right.
So, you know, all the songwriters who worked with Brian deserve credit because we're talking about a catalog that just stood the test of time. Um, and of course, we're talking mainly about the hit making years from 62 to 69, I guess. We know
Yeah,
68, do it again ish,
yeah, yeah.
So there was so many great songs in there. Ones that weren't, there's a lot of music I love in that period that's not even on the radio per se or became a big hit.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
But there's so many great things. So when I did my Zoom with Mike, that's up there now, we talked for 49 minutes, and I put up, I think, half of that on the Good Vibrations podcast.
yeah.
And, it just surprised me a little bit that I say, what's the most important award you ever got? It did not surprise me that he said this
Yeah,
Songwriters Award. But
yeah,
then he started talking about Murray
yeah.
instantly, without anything from me. And I thought, wow, this is a passage of time where Mike is trying to come to terms with the damage that's been done all these years.
It's a long time coming.
Yeah. So I don't think the same way that if not for Brian, because of Brian, I also don't think that this is long overdue. I think Mike's time is now, is the way I look at it. It's
Okay.
happening now because it's meant to happen now.
Yeah, for sure.
I wish it had happened in 2000 so that he and Brian could have gone in together.
Oh, that would have been cool. Yeah.
Uh, but it's happening now, and I think what it really does is it shows me. I can't speak for what it does for the world, but I think it really does properly illustrate Mike's contribution.
Yeah, as it should.
So it's a Lennon McCartney, um, Man and Wheel, Gershwin Brothers, Carole King, and what am I blanking on his name? Coffin and King.
Very often.
So many great songwriters through the years who were teams,
Yeah.
and and Wilson Love is a team that needs to be in the discussion of great American songwriters.
It's on
Uh,
hits.
so
I mean,
that
yeah, you can love that music Brian did, but without Mike's words to California Girls, you're just humming along to a great, great set of music, which is cool on its own, but the words add to the package.
And then I wanted to be fair to the spectrum of everything I'm talking about. I didn't want to just okay, Mike's getting inducted into, so I did not want to put on the cover Hall of Fame songwriter Mike Love.
Yeah,
I wanted to remind the reader that it's the team.
they did great stuff together. They really did.
Yeah, and so that's what I kind of tried to resubstantiate, give it some substantive, uh, provoke the thoughts to get people thinking about the songs. And so that's why the second feature is I went back and kind of called together different uh, popular songs by the group
Yeah.
Mike and I talking about different archival interviews through the years where we talked about everything from Good Vibrations to Kokomo to Fun, 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 whatever it was. And I put those songs in order
Yeah.
so that I could remind people about his contribution. And I even threw Almost Summer in there, which was unfortunately not a Beach Boys song,
In Big Sur
but
with
it
the
might as well have been.
yeah, it's close enough. Yeah.
And but I love that song. It never became. I mean, it became a moderate hit for a song that wasn't listed. If it had been listed as the Beach Boys, it would have gone all the way.
I
Uh,
think so. I think so, yeah.
so I wanted to include that because I thought it was a little off the beaten track. And then I wanted to include the conversation about Kokomo because not because again, if not for Brian, same thing. It wasn't to say, oh, look what Mike did without Brian. It was not that. What it was is to say, look how Mike was able to work with others.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
was the point of that piece
Yeah.
because he says, I don't even, in the interview, he says, I don't even know how John Phillips wrote it with Scott McKenzie. He said, I don't even know who did what. It was the fact that Terry Melcher took it and brought it to the group
Yeah.
and said, hey, what do you think? And I, I, I think you and I have talked about this before. I love the fact that Kokomo's got Van Dyke Parks,
Yeah.
Jim Keltner, Ry Cooter,
Like what a list.
Joel Peskin on sax. I mean, yes, Jim Keltner was the drummer for the Traveling Wilburys a
Yeah,
year before. Jim Keltner did all the percussion on Kokomo. He didn't use real drums, but he used salt shakers and stuff. He went to his kitchen and started
that's how you do it.
experimenting.
Yeah.
And so I love that about that recording that it's kind of this eclectic group of people. It was almost like for a moment a U.S. version of the Traveling Wilburys there for a second.
Yeah.
It's kind of the quill of that group of people. And dollars to donuts, most people who are Smile fans have no idea that Van Dyke Parks is on
That
Coca.
that always cracks me up because people are like, oh, Van Dyke Parks, he's like the 60s smile guy. It's like, yeah, he plays on Kokomo. It's like, what? I love that fact. That's one of my
he's
favorite Beach Boys facts.
he's on at least one song from Summer in Paradise too.
Yeah, I think he plays accordion on something.
Yeah,
I can't remember which one it was, but yeah.
I can't remember the song, but yeah, he's on at least one song off Summer in Paradise.
That I think that's also something people forget. It's like Mike and Van Dyke, they were cool with each other a lot of the time. They weren't like bitter rivals and enemies who hated each
No,
other. Like they knew how to work together well. They knew when to call on each other. It wasn't like
just as anyone in the music business or industry would do. I, the Smile thing, David Leaf's the expert. There's the book right behind you. But you know, Kevin Essence is my favorite song. So by the Beach Boys. So I'm not. It's we weren't there. We weren't there. None of us were there. The guys were there. Van Dyke was there.
yeah.
Um, it's just a weird. It's just a set of circumstances. We're talking about Murray. I've often wondered if Smiley Smile wasn't an album that Brian did for Murray because the Baldwin organ was a gift from Murray to
He
Brian.
loved that organ, man. That was one of his favorite toys.
So he went off of this really elaborate Smile thing. He shelves the album and then he does an entire album using the organ his father bought him. Again, is he looking for father's approval? I mean, what? And then a year later, he's got his dad on their Friends album. Then he writes a song with his father.
Well, I mean, the thing with Murray is like they were annoyed with him a lot, but they also loved him a lot too. It was a weird back and forth between those kids and him because of
Oh,
how they were raised. But and a lot of people know that in the early 70s, Denny was hanging out with him a lot before Murray died. They were hanging out all the time. So it was probably just one of those weird things where they were getting along with each other for a few weeks or a month. Hey, come on, sing on this song. Hey, here's an organ. Oh, cool. Oh, I hate you again. You stole my songs. You suck. Oh, hey, cool. We can go out. It must have been a weird back and forth. That's the only way
well, it
that
must
I
have
can
been
justify it.
very difficult for the boys
Oh, it
because,
must have been a complete headspin all the time.
oh yeah, because you always want I think this is an accurate statement. You always want your parents' approval.
Oh yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter what age you are.
You want to do good by them, right?
Exactly. You hope that what you're doing in life, or that your actions are through the lens of what they would hope that you would be doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, when it stinks because Murray was jealous almost immediately because no
Oh yeah.
no one, even though all the guys in the group would tell you, because they've told me, everyone knew pretty quickly that Brian had it. Whatever it was, they knew he had
Oh
it.
yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I don't know if Murray, when it became apparent to him, because I don't know if he would ever admit that he knew Brian had it,
I don't
because
think
I
you
think
want to
it was
accept it. Yeah,
too too much of an inner issue for him.
completely.
And so this is such a strange dichotomy, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But going back, we were just talking about this. No matter what, you still, and Mike did this in the new interview, and it's a part of the Zoom on the YouTube channel. He talks about it. He says, you know, my cousins may have done self-destructive things, and we've had our differences. That doesn't mean I don't love them.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Right.
know, so I think the same is true. Mike may have came back from touring and raised an eyebrow and gave a glare to Van Dyke and said, "What is this acid alliteration?" But it doesn't mean that he dislikes Van Dyke as a person.
That's exactly right.
It
People
does
seem to
not.
forget that.
It doesn't mean that he hates somebody. Now hate is such a strong word. I don't think it's applicable for Mike for anybody, but I could definitely see how Mike would quickly distrust and take quick uh, resentment toward, or the individuals plural quickly fall out of favor with him if A, he didn't know who they were, and B, he came over to Brian's house when Brian was working on their next big thing, which was Smile at the time, and he saw Brian the under the influence of something else that he didn't
Right.
know what it was.
Right.
So, whether it's marijuana was one thing. Mike smoked pot.
Right.
It was that wasn't the issue. It was they'd go on tour and they'd come back and there'd be all these strangers in Brian's
All
house.
these new people hanging around. Yeah. Right.
And it's not just they're there hanging out. They're there hanging out and they're on some sort of substance.
Right.
And well, okay, but if Brian's not able to complete what he's working on for us, which is the whole arrangement that we have,
Right.
then something's wrong here. And
Yeah.
ultimately, it did turn out to not be good because Brian has admitted as much through the years. And it's not just the drug use. There's
There were a lot of factors.
read David's book behind
Yeah.
you
It's just,
if you want to know more.
there's no one easy answer for why.
My book's downstairs. I would have just hold it up and plug
I
it.
mean,
Um,
no, I mean that whole era. I mean, you gotta think too. I mean, like Mike and the guys were on tour and they came back, and this is their livelihood. They want to make sure that there's music out there that people will want to buy and listen to and love. And they were protective of that because that meant they got to feed their families and have a house to live in and pay
yeah.
their bills. And if they're making music that no one wants to hear or doesn't even come out, what do you do? You
Well,
know,
and they would find out rather quickly,
very.
within a year and a half, just what that looked like.
It changed so quickly. But yeah, when you were talking to Mike too, I think the biggest thing I took from the whole interview was how much heart was in that interview. He really cares about this award. He really cares about. He mentioned talk about Brian. Just wanted to go over and hang out with him. Um, does he? Do they? I know in the documentary he said they don't chat too much, but like in the last year since that movie's been out, do you know if they've chat much or have seen each other or what's
I,
up?
I don't I don't know. I'm sensitive to it.
Yeah, and I get. Yeah,
I kind of let Mike take me where he wants to take me in those discussions.
sure. Yeah,
When I saw Mike appear at UCLA with David Leaf
yeah,
recently, my hope was that meant Mike was in the area, and that when that event was over, he went over to see his cousin.
Go hang out.
I'm
Yeah,
hoping that's what occurred. I don't know, but I would like to think that because he was with David,
yeah,
then let's come on, let's get in the car and go see Brian. And
yeah.
so I'm hoping that occurred. Um,
Same. Yeah.
that's this. It's not even about a music discussion. It's about an opportunity for two family members to spend some time together. So I hope that that occurred, and if it did not occur, I hope that it will occur really soon. Really soon.
You also mentioned in the new issue where he would look back on songs and maybe possibly redo or change around a little bit. You mentioned Fun Fun Fun, which I think most people have forgotten about at this point from the 90s. Get You Back, he's been doing that new version for I don't know, about a decade now. Um, did you hear what was his how should I word this? Do you think he's excited to look back and change songs around? Do you think he's more interested in the new stuff? He'd rather be working on new stuff.
I don't know. I don't really get a sense of that. I asked him also in that interview, who would you like to work with that you haven't worked with to do songs with?
Right,
When he said
right.
Mark McGrath, I just went, I got nothing against Mark McGrath.
It's fine, but like
But but
the
when I was asking that question in my mind, I was like, like Oasis or
Paul
just
McCartney.
McCartney or well, I don't know if somebody necessarily. Well, when I asked the question, I was asking, but yeah, like somebody, yeah, close to his who's been around for a while,
The
an
Lemon
Elton
Twigs.
John or a McCartney or yeah. But but he's used to Mark. Mark's been around for almost a decade around him.
Yeah.
I'm just my son loves the Do It Again version from Unleash the Love where Mark's yelling, "Do it, do it." My son loves it, so I know it has a place,
Uh-huh.
but not with me.
No, same. Yeah.
I'm just not. I'm just it. I'm if I were to go see a show that had I mean, I've seen footage of Mark. He was at Beach Life with them.
Yeah, right.
I see what he's been at some Fourth of July events with them at DC at the Capitol. So I've seen him in action.
Yeah.
I get his role. I understand his role. He runs and he gets everybody pumped up. I mean, he's
Yep.
waving his arms. And that's fine. I'm all for having a
There's
good
a
time.
space for that. Sure.
I'm not. I guess when I asked that Mike that question, I was thinking from more of a artistic is not the right word, but someone who,
Like a dream scenario.
yeah, like who haven't you worked with that would be like, and he just came up with Mark, and I thought, oh, okay, and then he mentioned those other guys, and I've seen the video on his timeline. I went back and looked at it. I can't think of their name,
The
but
Offspring with Dexter Holland from The
okay,
Offspring.
yeah, yeah, and that was okay. I mean, I didn't mind the thing he did with the those country guys.
Locash.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
That was yeah.
It was fun. So I mean, I like those things, but it kind of suggested to me that Mike's presence of mind and where he is right now is is more about just kind of enjoying himself than it is thinking about things from a artistic effort level.
I get it. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, and I was so when I
people
asked him,
need to be different, you
he
know.
repeated a lot of the answers he gave me at David Leaf's thing because I watched the thing with
Oh, did
David.
it really? I haven't watched the video yet. It's on my list.
I asked him. I said, "Okay, I'm going to go outside the box with you." It's on the YouTube thing.
Yeah.
I said, so, and I think it's also in the magazine. If you had, other than, who's your favorite? Other than you, a songwriter out there that has written a song, who would it be? And his response was, he paused and he went, wow, like, what a question. And he said, Marvin Gaye's, what's going on?
That was
And,
yeah.
and that, I like seeing him go, wow. Like
Yeah.
he stopped and really gave it thought. So I was hoping when I asked him the question later about who would you like to work with, that he'd maybe say a Stevie Wonder or
Yeah.
somebody like that to where he could. go into rhythm and blues with some, because I know he loves rhythm and blues and doo-wop, and like who's still around that you could do that with is kind
Yeah.
of what my thoughts were. But you know, I, we, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it very sincerely. Um, Mike's 84. Brian's 80, about to turn 83.
Yeah.
Um, Mike, I think, my perspective only, pushes himself too hard.
He tours all the time.
And when I see him on stage, he's still trying to kind of push the same way he pushed 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how he does it. He's a juggernaut for an 84-year-old.
That's for sure.
Um, but I mean, I love that he tours. My son loves going to see him, and Mike talked about in my interview, and he talked about it with David Leaf too. How about a 10-year-old girl who came to a show down in
Right.
Florida who had the sign? She wanted to go see the Beach Boys for her 10th birthday,
Yeah.
and he gets weepy when he talks about it. He almost cries, and it's like, wow, he has come like he's not the guy I met in the '90s. It's he is in a place of such gratification, and he feels so grateful, and he recognizes that he's lucky.
Yeah.
He really does. He does understand that this music that he created with his cousin and his cousins and his friend and their neighbor and all that all those years ago. You don't. I think it still amazes. I think there's a component. Him getting on stage in the back and forth between him and the audience. That's not new to him.
Yeah.
That's why he does it. What's new? What continues? I think not surprise. I think that's too strong of a word. What continues to hearten him is the continued new generations of fans. I mean, the guy's 84 years old and he's looking out and he's seeing a 10-year-old girl with a sign that says, I want to see the Beach Boys for my birthday. And then he signs the sign for the girl and he hands it back to the mother, and the mother is crying
Yeah.
because of what it meant for her little girl. I
Yeah.
mean, just that that element of authentic oh gosh, it's like this. We could talk about how much we love the music all day long, and
Yeah.
we do. But just the fact that because we talk about the everlasting, this music, it's lasted all these decades, and then when you see it, when you experience it in the moment, where people are so moved that they're crying, and Mike's retelling the story, and he's starting to get to cry.
Yeah.
That's as authentic and as real as so he's getting a reward that I don't think he ever saw coming.
No. And I think he understands the heaviness of it. I think he understands the weight of it. And it's got to be a trip. I mean, he wrote some of these songs 60 years ago,
And
and kids still discover them.
yeah, and I think I'm my guess would be part of what makes him weep and gets him emotional and has him feeling nostalgic is because he misses his cousin as much as he does.
That's a question I've always wanted to ask. If I ever got the chance to interview Mike, one question I would ask is, does he ever turn around sometimes and look for the guys? Does it ever like you ever get lost in a song one time, be like, oh man, oh Carl's not there? Yeah, does that ever
Oh,
happen? It's gotta be
that's an interesting question.
memories there.
Yeah, yeah.
They toured like that for a long time before all the guys before they split in the late 90s. Um,
I think that that's why I think it's important. Well, maybe I don't know if that's too strong of a word, but I think that's what makes having a John Bolton in
yeah,
the group a great component for Mike now
I agree. I,
because he's goofy and he's fun.
yeah,
And Mike at 84 appreciates goofy and fun.
I agree. Yeah.
And that's why he goes back and he pours the bottles of water on the drum set because he's creating a memory for himself in that moment. Oh, this is fun. I
It's
like,
the
oh,
best.
man,
It
this is
looks really cool to
great.
watch. Yeah.
And so there, yeah, I like that for Mike because all Mike's trying to do at this point in his life, other than entertain people, is have a little fun while he's doing it.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and so yeah, I just think I thought the world of the guy for a very long time. And in saying that, I'm saying that I will not even be having this discussion if not for Brian Wilson. So because of Brian
Because
Wilson,
of Prime, yeah.
hey, because of Brian Wilson, we can have this discussion,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
right? So when I'm saying, I adore Mike for what he does, that's because I'm able to adore the whole spectrum of what the Beach Boys were and are now. If not because of, I'm doing it to myself, because of the great music that's sustained to this day.
Yeah.
There's going to be a day when you and I won't even be here anymore, and someone's going to be having this discussion about this music.
There will be another David Beard and another Giggins at some point. Yep.
So but
If
the
they can be
music's
so
just not.
lucky. Yeah.
It's these recorded events. If any artist, they're recorded events. They're audible snapshots
Yeah.
of time, and that's why I think they're great, and that's one of the reasons I struggled with this cover. I was trying to like put
Love it.
their noted singles behind them so that people would kind of be able to see. And I went through like old singles, I did this many years ago. I scanned singles and I properly photoshopped,
Yeah.
put Mike's name on the single.
Oh, God, that's awesome.
And I did that because it was supposed to be there to begin with.
Right.
So if you watch my YouTube interview with Mike, where the singles show up, all of them are properly credited.
I gotta watch that. I haven't seen it.
It's I feel like I'm not going to show the bad deed that took place. I'm
Right.
going to show how it ought to be, which was restored in the 90s. And Mike talks about it with me, and he talked about it with David Leaf when he was at UCLA.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He talks about how, you know, Brian called Mike before that lawsuit
Yeah.
and said, Mike, how do we sort this out? I know that you wrote those songs. What do we do? And unfortunately, at that time, Brian was not in control. He did not have control over his finances. He had a conservator in place, and the lawyer, Carl, had placed I think Carl was in charge.
Okay.
Um, that's all not clear to me, but because I don't know enough about that fine line of information and how that was
Right.
handled.
Right.
But at that time, Brian had a conservatorship, and Brian said, Mike, I want you to have your credits taken care of, and I want this to happen. But he couldn't do it himself
Yeah.
because that's his life wasn't set up that way to just make a call to a lawyer and say, "Will you fix this?" And I guess it couldn't be that simple. So
Yeah.
again, that's another thing that people, oh, Mike Love is this horrible person because he took Brian to court. Those are those circumstances were again, why did they happen? Murray Wilson.
Yeah.
That never would have taken place if not for Murray not crediting Mike on the songs to begin with. So Murray dies, he passes away in the early 70s. And here we are in the 90s,
Yeah. 20 years later.
and Murray's actions, not Mike's actions,
Right.
Murray's actions are still having an impact on the relationship between Mike and Brian, and the ramifications are not good.
Yeah.
Brian never hated Mike because of that lawsuit. Brian, there are interviews where anybody knows this about Brian. You can cue Brian in a question. I
Oh,
mean, you
yeah.
can just say, if you ask Brian a yes or no question, he's going to say yes or no.
Right.
The other thing you can do with Brian is you can cue him. So you could say, Brian, it's my understanding you don't like Mike. You could do that, and then the next he's going to respond to the question. He's going to say,
Right.
"Yeah, I don't like Mike,"
Yeah.
and then oh look, he doesn't like Mike.
That's because he hates interviews, so it's easier to give an answer and just get it over with and go
Exactly.
back to doing his thing. So yeah.
And Brian, Brian and Mike love each other.
Oh,
I know it's the soft stuff and that's super nice and everything, and nobody, oh, that's not a clickbait or any. but it's just true. It's just true.
David, man, this has been so much fun to chat about this issue. Is it officially out now, or is it coming out soon?
Oh, it's been mailed to subscribers. It'll be available, I
Okay,
think, in early June for individual purchase.
cool.
And
Yeah,
what's coming next is we're picking up with Brian Wilson Productions Part Three,
nice.
and that's gonna not. I'm just gonna name the names. Hopefully, I'm getting them in the right order. I don't know that I'm getting them in the right order, but they're going to be. I think I have them here. Yes. No. No. They're going to be. And they've already appeared in the earlier issues, but there's work that Brian did when he returned to outside productions with these artists again. So I have something with Dean Torrance, I have Danny Hutton, I have Ginger Blake, because Brian returned to the Honeys in December of '68.
Yep,
I have Stephen Kalinich talking about A World of Peace Must Come.
nice.
And that interview I just did with him, and it was fascinating. I've got Don Goldberg, I've got David Sandler, who did the
Oh,
Spring
the,
album with
the
Brian.
producer was Spring. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I've got that done. I did an interview years ago with Don Goldberg about, but it was almost very close to word for word what his book was.
Oh, cool.
His book had just been released, so I didn't want to publish that interview because I thought, oh gosh, people read my interview, they're going to get the book and feel like I'm reading the same thing
Ripped
here.
off. Yeah, right.
So I'm going to put something kind of like a bridge. So it's going to be volume 3 and 4, and then of course Cows in the Pasture, which is I don't have specifics on that, but I know that's supposed to come out later this year.
That's the rumor. Yeah,
So hopefully that will all fall together to provide the readers with a full year of Brian Wilson production outside the Beach Boys. And it's interesting to me, but I was going to tell you, talking to Steve Kalinich, I had always thought Cows in the Pastures project, just like Steven's project, was the case where Brian got interested and then he stopped. That was the impression that I had. And
yeah,
that was the reason that the projects weren't completed.
right.
And after talking to Stevie, man, I had no idea. That was a full on Brian Wilson project. And it's a number of things he told me in that interview really surprised me. I had no idea Brian ran around with an acetate of that record trying to get it on a label.
Really?
Yeah,
Damn. That's cool.
yeah. So I mean, there's either an acetate or a master. Can't recall off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
Brian was trying to get that record because he loved. Brian loved this, just like Brian loved the Friends album.
Yeah.
Brian loved this softer thing, this idea of presenting listeners with a poetry album and spoken word, and he loved it.
Bill.
But again, it wasn't something that at the time was either psychedelic or whatever the suits were looking for.
No,
So
we weren't looking for the Beach Boys or related things at that time, so that's what it was.
just crazy. But yeah, so that's kind of and there are plenty, I assure you. I have over a year's worth of content that's not even going in this year's issues that I'm trying to kind of figure out how to put it, where it's going to go. I mean, I've got photos of the Beach Boys during their Sunflower album photo shoot, and the story. And I interviewed the person who took the photos. She's the godmother of Cher's daughter, or
Yeah,
no, Cher's the godmother of her daughter. Um, so there's a whole story about because she was hanging out with Ricky Martin one day, and Ricky said, "Do you want to go up to my dad's place? They're doing a Beach Boys shoot."
right.
So I have all these pictures that she took, and I have an interview about the day, and I got all the pictures to go with it. So I'm just trying to find where am I going to put that? It's like a
That's
standalone.
55th anniversary of Sunflower Edition. That's all.
I guess if I'm still doing ESQ, I don't know.
It's next year.
Oh, it is.
No, it's
Wait
this
a
year.
minute. It's
It's
this
this.
year.
Holy crap. That was
Wow.
5 years ago.
Wow. It does not seem like it's been 5 years since Field Flows came out.
That is insane. That flew by.
That went by way too quick.
That flew by. I remember the issue vividly.
So do I. That was great. That was a great
That was
issue.
a
I
good one.
remember when I came across the photo of Bruce sitting next to the French composer,
Uh,
Michael
what's
something. And I sent the photo to Bruce and he went, wow, look at that hair.
yeah.
'Cause
That
Bruce had a lot of hair back then. He was
big
like,
mop
wow,
on
look how
top.
much hair
Yeah.
I used to have.
Yeah.
But yeah, that turned out to be a fantastic issue. That,
Oh, yeah.
anytime I got Craig Slewinski and his group of guys his gang of researchers to put together. There's Will, there's John, there's Jocelyn, and Craig. I hope I'm not forgetting somebody, but I know there's at least four of them
Yeah.
who work on that stuff. And that Lee always tells me, "I got another issue to sell that well." And I thought, well, if I'm not doing it's the sessionography stuff that really does when we have that all in the interviews and the photos and the sessionography
Yeah.
all in one place. It's nice to be able to do that for the reader. But I
Yeah.
don't know I don't know any record that's coming up that I haven't covered already. I mean, that's going to have new something in it because I've already done interviews with Mike and Al about Holland. Carl's not here.
Yeah.
You know, Blondie and Ricky are, but I thought their interviews that they did that appeared in the Beach Boys by the Beach Boys and in was it Record Collector that came out?
Oh, the newer one. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it came out about half a year ago or
Yeah.
so that Lee Dempsey was in.
Right. Right.
Those interviews were really good,
Yeah.
and
They were cool.
I just kind of thought, well, I don't know what else there is to ask. I kind of felt like it was covered very well there. Um, So I'm not sure what other albums there are. I've got these weird odd and end interviews that I've done that didn't fit into other things that were a part of other things,
Yeah.
but they didn't fit in. So I'm trying to figure out where to do them. So I've interviewed Michelle Phillips.
I remember we talked about that last time. It
So
was coming up last time we chatted.
that's something it's going to take a little time to put together, but I'm going to talk to Owen Elliott, Cass's daughter.
Whoa, that's cool.
So Wendy Carney, Owen, Michelle, and that'll be fun, to kind of pull together that story, because it's Michelle Phillips is as a I I think I was telling Steve Lewis this to me, and I told Michelle this when I was talking to her. There's two songs that I think would be when I think California, as somebody who lives on the East Coast.
Yeah.
If I had to tell somebody what two songs should you know that are West Coast, I would say two songs: "Surfing USA" and "California Dreaming."
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Those are like two songs that "Surfing USA" kind of was the early '60s kind of cultural thing, and then mid '60s "California Dreaming" it's an autumn song of all things, but
Yeah,
it still speaks to the whole
it makes you
energy and
think of it.
vibe of that era,
Yeah.
kind of even a little bit more than Good Vibrations does. Good Vibrations doesn't suggest California. Good
No.
Vibrations suggests uh, a period.
Yeah.
It's more of a period recording that you can hear it and go, oh my God, this was as good as it got in the '60s.
Right. It's a
Yeah,
meditation. Yeah.
it's
Keeps
but
the
yeah,
groove.
but so that stuff, lots of I hope interesting stuff coming. I interviewed a guy named his name is Robert. Oh, is it Flesher or Fleischer? It's been a while since I've looked at the interview, but this is an interview that's I think over 2 years old now.
Yeah.
And he was a guy that ended up kind of coming into their circle in the mid 70s, ended up living up on Mike's Santa Ana Barbara place, and um, initially they wanted him to do artwork for their next album. And so I've got that artwork, and didn't happen.
Yeah,
So I've got this artwork that was for a proposed record in the mid 70s. And so I'm trying I'm trying to think, okay, what's the best way to present this? Where will this fit? And so there may be an odds and ends ESQ where there's
that'd be cool.
these different things that took place in and around their lives, but at just different just different points. Got I've got an interview with a lawyer. That's interesting. Um, but again, it's just trying to, where would this fit? Where does this make sense? And so I've got a guy. Yeah, there's a couple of interviews. One with the lawyer and the guy that helped the Beach Boys do and this is all tied together. The guy who helped them do their July 4th shows back in '84 with Ringo,
Nice.
and how they got Ringo into the country because he wasn't supposed to be here.
Right. Yeah, I love that story.
So that's all broken down, and how they got him on the plane, and how they, oh man, that's like a whole. I had no idea when I watched that footage. I had no idea that Ringo wasn't supposed to be on stage playing drums.
It was a special magic trick they performed.
It was because it was filmed.
Right.
So he wasn't so well.
This is
He's
give
on
it away.
stage. What do you
Yeah.
do? And then they flew him to Miami for the night show. I mean, and then out he went, which makes sense when you go back to Jeffrey Foskett's interview in the summer 2023 issue. Remember, I did the '85 album,
Yeah,
and he was told that when Ringo came in to record, everybody had to leave.
that's right. Yeah.
And now that makes sense. That no photos, no anything, because he's probably wasn't supposed to be there.
He was an illegal Beatle.
I love it. Illegal deal.
Very Beatle story.
Yes, yes. Just
Yeah.
kind of like Paul in Japan.
And that too.
Don't put me behind. I was watching Saturday Night Live when that happened because I think Paul was supposed to be the guest, and Father Guido Sarducci came on. No, what the heck? Oh, this is what it was. Paul was in a hotel. Father Guido Sarducci was out on the street, and he was throwing stones at the room that Paul was in up in the hotel
Yeah.
to get him to come out. And Paul came out, and he was a little annoyed with him.
Yeah.
And he started asking him questions about getting busted with the pot and getting arrested in Japan. And it's crazy. It's so crazy.
TV
But
was a different thing back then.
man, I'm just all over the place tonight. Um,
All good. Well, we can wrap it up there because that way we can leave people to pick up the magazine and or the issue or subscribe if they haven't subscribed yet. Um, but yeah, what's the best? I always ask this: what's the best place for people to find you? What's the website? What's the Facebook? Where can they find you at?
well, easy things to do on uh, Instagram, really Instagram or Pinterest or I get Threads, whatever. I'm still trying to understand Threads. But it's ESQ Editor, I think, on those different
Yeah,
platforms.
right.
If you're on Facebook, just type in Endless Summer Quarterly, the magazine. I'd encourage people to become a member of the group community.
Yes. Yep.
Um, and you see that when you get to the page, there's a little group thing to join if you want to. It's Endless Summer Quarterly group.
Yeah.
I tend to share more things to that directly than the actual Endless Summer Quarterly page. I try to keep the page for news about a magazine or something that I've done specifically, as opposed to just sharing the news of what Brian or Mike or Al might be posting. I
Right.
share it into the group.
Right. Yeah.
Then is the Good Vibrations program on YouTube. I think the
Yep.
channel is ESQ Editor. Um, I highly recommend watching the 2024 promotional ESQ promotional video.
Yes.
It is the only video that you will see anywhere in the world with Brian, Mike, Al, and Bruce endorsing yours truly.
It's so cool.
And AI was not used. There was no AI.
Believe it or not.
Believe it or not, AI was not used. So, well, it's an honor and privilege. It is. I just love it. I mean, I wouldn't have been doing this for 30 plus years if I. It's just there are days when I'm like, what am I doing? But for the most part, I like writing about this stuff. I find inspiration in it. I think maybe the same way that Mike does when he takes the stage and he gets that thing. Not that I don't have that. I don't have an audience or anything like that. I just like getting letters. I do enjoy getting letters where people are saying, "Oh my gosh, when I read such and such an article or whatever, I really liked." And Ron Vaccaro, who will often co-host with me on my podcast, he's my biggest fan. He, I'm always blowing his horn. He works for NBC Sports. He's the vice president of editing for NBC Sports.
Right.
I mean, he hangs with. I, I'm going way off track here. But during the Paris Olympics, he sent me a photo. He's sitting here. He's got Mike Tirico, Peyton Manning, and Kelly Clarkson sitting around him. And, and he's like this, and he looks just unhappy. And underneath the photo, he wrote, "I'd rather be at a Beach Boys concert." And I'm thinking to myself, dude, you're out of your mind. What are you
That's
talking? Look
funny.
at you are just you're number one, you're in Paris.
Yeah.
You're sitting with those people.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? What are you, what's going on? So
The
he's a
Beach
big
Boy
fan.
fan humor. Yeah.
No, he's a nut. He goes and sees them. I would say on the average a year he probably sees them at least 10 to 15 times a year.
Holy smokes.
Yeah,
He travels for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he goes. Yeah, like he ended up at the beach life festival because he was there for something with his job, and
Yeah.
he was able to just pop down and catch it. So he did.
So cool.
He's a major nut.
As we all are for this band. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
he goes for the fun. He will. You can read his reviews on the ESQ website. He's
Yes.
for the fun. So ESQ
That.
website is ESQUARTERLY.com. I mean, you can go there. There's a button for magazine subscription. There's a button for about, and then you click on there, and it'll kind of tell you about the magazine's history.
Yeah.
And then page down, you can see all the different people who have helped out through the years, whether they're currently helping or they've helped in the past. And if they've got a link, you can click on their face. It'll take you right to their respective place.
That's right.
Uh, and like Andrew Doe isn't always actively writing or doesn't much anymore, but his website's invaluable if you want to study. Go to the shows and sessions part of his website any year, and you can discover so much.
Hmm.
But I recommend that. But yeah. So anyway, I'm tired and I'm rambling.
Well, we can shop it there. David, man, it's always fun to hang out and chat with you about about the magazine and just to catch up. But this will be up in a couple of days, and thank you guys so much for watching. Leave your comments below for David. If you got questions for him, he'll see them, and we'll do this again very soon. But thanks, man.
All right.